So all of you have probably already heard that there won't be a PlayStation experience this year. But what does that mean for The Last of Us Part 2? Hey stragglers and tourists, my name is TheiPadCat and today I'm going over my thoughts on PSX 2018 not happening. When is the next trailer or promotional material coming out for Part 2? And what does this tell us about the game's release date? So without dragging out this intro section any longer, let's get on with it. So when I first heard about PSX not happening this year, I was very confused. I was almost 100% certain that that was when the next big reveal for Part 2 was going to happen. But apparently not. Here's what PlayStation Studios Worldwide Chairman Sean Layden had to say about it. We won't have it in the States this year. The reasons behind that really are we have a lot of progress that we're making on our games. Now that we have Spider-Man out the door, we're looking down into 2019 games like Dreams and Days Gone, but we wouldn't have enough to bring people all together in some location in North America to have that event. We don't want to set expectations really high and then not deliver on that. It was a hard decision, but we have determined that this year we will not hold a PlayStation experience. Now what I thought was going to happen was that we wouldn't get anything Part 2 related during Paris Games Week, since that would be too close to E3, where we got a lot of new stuff. But since Part 2 is slowly approaching its release, I thought it only natural that the marketing would also slowly start to ramp up and be more frequent. But that is obviously not the case. It leaves us with the question when we are getting our next glimpse of the game. We almost certainly won't get it during PGW, and now that there is no PSX, there isn't really any event left it could be during 2018. Sure, there are a lot of small local gaming events, but none where Sony would hold their pompous and grand conferences. And even if there would be, could they? Since Layden said in his statement that there really isn't anything to show. Really, the next big event is GDC, or the Game Developers Conference, but that is in March next year, and that does seem a little far off. And beside that, GDC isn't really a marketing event with trailers upon trailers. Sure, there might be some, but there are no big conferences like during E3. So it might be that we don't get anything there either. But that would only really leave us with E3 2019 as the next possible event where we could see anything. And when Neil Druckmann said 10 months ago that the game was around 50 to 60% complete, it seems very weird that Sony and Naughty Dog would wait a year between marketing and info dump events. When do you think we'll get the next info dump or trailer or whatever for Part 2? Answer the poll up there in the top right corner. Now, let's talk a little bit about the release date. No, there isn't really any new information on it, so keep your shirt on. But what Sean says about Sony's 2019 games gets me slightly worried. Quote, "Now that we have Spider-Man out the door, we're looking down into 2019 games like Dreams and Days Gone." Unquote. That, to me, is a very interesting choice of examples he brings up. Dreams and Days Gone are PlayStation exclusives, and both will probably release before Part 2, so that might be a reason for him picking those two specific games as examples. But having the position he has, he's definitely aware of which games are most anticipated. And no offense to the developers of either Days Gone or Dreams, but those two just aren't on the same hype level as The Last of Us Part 2. Now, of course, his choice of words might mean nothing. A lot of journalists might have tried to get a hold of him at the same time, making him slightly stressed out, and he didn't really think that much of the specific wording of his statement. Or he might just have actually told us that The Last of Us Part 2 won't release in 2019. Yes, I know that sounds frustrating. You don't want to believe it, I don't want to believe it. But let's look at what may point towards that being the case. First, he says that they're making a lot of progress on their games, but that there isn't enough to show people to get anyone excited. Now, since he's talking about all of Sony's studios, that also applies to Naughty Dog. 2. We've previously had it confirmed that Days Gone is releasing before Part 2, but now with this statement it also seems that that applies to Dreams. 3. For Naughty Dog's previous full titles, it's almost always taken at least 3 years to complete. The Last of Us Part 1 began development in fall 2009 and ended just before summer 2013, which makes its development time a little less than 4 years. Uncharted 4 was developed between the second half of 2013 and the end of May 2016, so a little less than 3 years. Now, while Part 2 has been in pre-production since after Left Behind was released, it wasn't in full production until Uncharted The Lost Legacy was released, which was summer last year. So let's say that that long pre-production time took off 6 months from the typical 3-year cycle, but halfway through 2017 plus 2.5 years would still make it complete sometime in early 2020. That sucks, and I totally want to be wrong about it, but now with no PSX due to Sony and indirectly Naughty Dog not having enough to show us, it seems all the more likely. What does sort of speak against it though is the 50 to 60% complete thing Neil Druckmann said at PSX 2017. Personally though, I have changed my release date prediction from somewhere between late spring and early fall 2019 to early 2020. When do you think it's going to release? Answer the poll up there in the top right corner. These are just my thoughts on the whole PSX being cancelled debacle. What do you think? Do you agree with my points? Disagree? When do you think we'll get more info or a trailer on Part 2? And when do you think it releases? Tell me in the comments down below and let's discuss it. And until next time, have a great day.